Hey guys, in today's video, I bring you an impactful and transformative story. Let's meet Calista Faye Ashford, a woman who literally faced death in the face and came back with a powerful message. Love is the only truth. During a near-death experience, Calista was taken to a spiritual realm where she discovered humanity's true purpose. What she saw and felt in this sacred place will leave you speechless. Before we start, leave your like, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any content like this, and activate the bell to receive all notifications. Now, get ready for an exciting journey full of revelations about love and existence. My name is Calista Faye Ashford, and what I'm going to tell you is not just a story, but a revelation that changed everything I believed. In a split second, as I felt my heart stop, I was launched on a journey that completely transformed my outlook on life, love, and existence. Today, I am a different person, not because I chose to be, but because what I saw and felt left marks that will never go away. I grew up in Seattle, a city known for its rainy climate and the mountains in the background, a beauty that always seemed to beckon my dreams. Since I was little, I had an intense desire to explore the world, especially Italy. I never knew for sure the reason for this attraction, but deep down, I always believed that when I set foot in that country, something magical would happen. When I finally had the chance to make this dream come true, I was so excited that I decided I wouldn't waste a single second. I took energy pills, something that seemed harmless at the time, but led to an experience that would transform my life, and it is this experience that I want to share. For as long as I can remember, I have always had a special connection with movement, dance, music. My mother told me that, before I even learned to speak, I swayed my body to any melody I heard. I believed, somehow, that each movement could connect me to something bigger, to a truth that couldn't fit into words. My childhood was like that of many children in Seattle. Cloudy days, snow on the mountains in the distance, quiet afternoons at the local libraries. My parents were loving but practical. They always encouraged my studies, but they told me to keep my feet on the ground when I talked about my dream of being a professional dancer. It was a distant reality for them, but for me, dancing was a language of the soul. While other kids imagined safe professions like lawyers or doctors, I wanted to step onto stages and explore the world. And, of all the places in the world, Italy has always had a special place in my heart. I dreamed of its narrow streets, the cathedrals, the ancient palaces, and the fields covered with sunflowers. It was as if something called me from there, something I couldn't explain. When I talked about this desire, my parents smiled in an understanding way, but without really believing that one day I would make this dream come true. It was only in high school, when I started studying art and history, that I realized how much that country pulsated in my imagination. I saw photos of the Renaissance statues, the vibrant paintings, and imagined that one day I would be there, in front of it all. When the teacher announced an exchange trip to Florence, I could hardly believe it. That chance to see, to feel, to touch a part of my dreams was finally within my reach. The trip was planned months in advance, but my anxiety began to grow with each passing day. I wanted to take it all in, not let any details slip by. I spent the weeks before the match sleeping poorly, waking up with a tightness in my chest, as if the expectations were greater than I could handle. And, the night before boarding, I practically didn't sleep. On the morning of the match, with deep circles under my eyes and an exhausted body, I found myself fighting sleep. I knew that when I arrived in Italy, I wanted to be completely present, full of energy. At the airport, I stopped at a pharmacy and saw a bottle of energy pills, those that promised instant energy and refreshment for a tired mind. I didn't think twice. I took a dose without hesitation. At that moment, all that mattered was making sure I had the perfect experience. Little did I know that when I swallowed those pills, I wasn't just trying to maintain my energy. I was beginning a much greater journey, a journey that would take me beyond anything the physical world could offer me. The plane was almost landing in Florence when I started to notice something strange happening. I felt my heart beating fast, so fast that it seemed to accompany the anxiety and enthusiasm I felt. Each pulse echoed through my head, like drums in a fast-paced, uncontrolled song. I tried to calm myself by taking deep breaths, but with each breath my chest felt tighter, as if an invisible current was constricting it. Something wasn't right. I looked around to see if anyone had noticed. My colleagues were talking excitedly about the landscapes that were unfolding outside the window, and the world seemed to continue its normal rhythm. I didn't want to worry anyone, so I turned to the window and closed my eyes, trying to ignore the uncomfortable feeling and pretending that everything was fine. But suddenly, the frantic rhythm of the beats began to slow down in a frightening way, until silence took over me. It was absolute silence, as if the sound had been sucked into a void, and at the same time, a cold sensation ran through me. I felt like my heart was stopping. It was a terrifying realization, as if life was slowly slipping away from me, but without pain, just an eerie calm. I opened my mouth to call someone, but I couldn't. In an instant, a lightness came over me. It was as if I was disconnecting from my body, being gently pulled upwards. The last image I had before seeing myself floating was of my own body, inert, leaning against the plane seat, pale and motionless. There was something deeply strange about this vision. The body I saw seemed like a clay sculpture, lifeless, soulless, an empty object, disconnected from my essence. I felt myself floating above, watching myself as if I were someone else. At the same time that it seemed like a surreal scene, an inexplicable tranquility enveloped me. There was no desperation, fear, or urgency, just an acceptance that for some reason I no longer belonged in that human form. It was as if my physical body were clothes that I no longer wore, a shell that was no longer part of who I really was. Looking down, I took in the people around me. No one seemed to notice what was happening to me. I was out of my body, with no connection to the life that, until minutes before, was all I knew. There was no pain or confusion, just a feeling of freedom that enveloped me, as if all physical limitations had disappeared. It was at that moment that I realized that what I was experiencing was more than a simple fainting spell or an episode of extreme tiredness. I was in another state, in a new form of consciousness, and somehow I knew the journey was just beginning. I was floating, completely disconnected from my body. Looking at myself from that angle was like looking at a frozen image, something that seemed distant and lifeless. The expression on my face was serene, and I realized that, even though I was still, there was an indescribable peace in that scene. I didn't feel the fear of death as I always imagined would happen. On the contrary, the lightness and freedom that enveloped me were intense, as if I had been freed from a prison that I didn't even know existed. It was then that I began to notice something strange in the environment around me. People kept talking, laughing, moving, but there was something different. Everything seemed more vibrant. The colors around me had a special, almost supernatural luminosity. Every detail was so vivid that I could see the texture of the fabric on the seats, the strands of hair on the passengers, and even the dust particles that floated in the air, moving in a pattern that had previously seemed invisible to me. However, the most impressive thing was not just seeing these details clearly, but the feeling that every object, every person, was enveloped in a kind of energy. This energy seemed to gently pulse, as if it were the breath of everything around me. I had never noticed this before, as if the physical world was a composition of invisible vibrations. In my new perception, everything seemed interconnected, as if each thing had an essential part in the whole. I started to look at the people around me differently. Each one had a kind of energetic signature, something I had never seen before. The man in front of me, who was sleeping peacefully, emanated a bluish color, calm and serene. The girl next to her, with her eyes fixed on the phone, displayed a yellowish energy, but with red traces that pulsed around her, as if they were reflecting some type of concern. Somehow I could see people's feelings and stories through these colors and vibrations. It was as if I was witnessing their essences, their fears and joys. I could feel the hidden pains, the secrets that each person carried, all manifested in that energetic aura. Even inanimate things, like the plane walls and luggage, had a kind of subtle vibration, something I never imagined could exist before. This new world was both fascinating and frightening. I felt euphoric, invincible, as if I had access to a hidden truth of the universe. A certainty grew in me. What I was seeing and feeling went beyond material life. It was a level of reality that most people would never experience. And even though I didn't fully understand it, I felt like I was ready to move on, to discover what else this expanded state of consciousness had to show me. Floating in that state, I realized that this new vision allowed me to see people and objects in a way I had never imagined before. It was as if I could look through the outer layers of each being, each object, reaching its essence. All the passengers, even the strangers around me, revealed a unique energy, almost as if their life stories were inscribed in what I called an aura. As I looked at each one, I noticed details that would have been invisible before. In front of me, a middle-aged man with a calm but worn expression was emitting a dim, greenish light with dark spots. Without knowing how, I understood that this indicated fragile health, some kind of internal struggle that he was fighting, probably without anyone around him knowing. It was like seeing her vulnerability laid bare, but without judgment, just with a deep understanding. I turned to the girl sitting a few rows away, whose energy vibrated intensely, with a mix of colors that reflected conflicting emotions. Without any words exchanged, I knew she faced silent anguish, a painful secret she preferred to keep hidden. It was strange to have access to these deep hidden truths, but at the same time I felt connected to these people in an intimate and compassionate way. It was as if the universe was showing me that each human being was a mosaic of experiences, feelings and memories, all carrying invisible burdens that influenced their lives. And instead of feeling pity or regret, what I experienced was a deep empathy, a genuine compassion that seemed to flow naturally from me. I understood that every pain and every joy, every trauma and every secret, contributed to the essence of who these people really were. As I looked around me, I also noticed energies emanating from inanimate objects, something that until then I had considered impossible. There was a metal bar next to the window that seemed to pulse, emitting a regular vibration, almost as if it had a life of its own. Every detail of the physical world seemed charged with meaning, as if the universe itself expressed itself through these invisible energies. My mind tried to process all of this. So many years of limited vision, so focused on my own journey, and now here I was, facing a greater truth. Suddenly, I understood that what I always thought was the invisible was, in fact, non-existent. It was just something that the common eye couldn't reach, a realm beyond appearances, where all things were intertwined in a web of invisible connections. That moment brought me an epiphany. Humanity, for the most part, does not see this reality, this hidden dimension of vibrations and feelings, and at that moment, I felt an inexplicable gratitude. It was as if the universe was granting me a glimpse of a cosmic secret, something sacred, reserved for those who cross the threshold between life and death. With my heart, or whatever essence was left of me, full of humility and wonder, I knew this was just a small part of the revelation. Something greater awaited me, a call from an even higher presence, and without hesitation, I surrendered to the unknown, allowing that invisible force to lead me to the next stage of this journey. Floating in this state of deep awareness, I suddenly felt a change in the environment around me. A presence made itself felt, something so powerful that it seemed to fill every space on that plane. It was as if the air had become denser, charged with a vibrant and welcoming energy. I felt a gentle but firm pull pulling me in one direction, as if an invisible force was inviting me forward. Although there were no words or gestures, a silent communication began to flow between this presence and my consciousness. It sounded like a conversation, although there was no sound. It was a feeling of understanding, as if that entity spoke directly to my essence. I knew without a shadow of a doubt that I was facing something sacred, a presence that was not human, but that possessed a deep and absolute love, something I had never experienced before. Without hesitation, I let that presence lead me, giving myself completely to whatever came next. I was pulled into a white space, vast and limitless, a realm where there were no walls, floor, or sky, just a soft light that enveloped everything around me. There was no time, there was no urgency, and for the first time I understood what it meant to be in a state of absolute peace. Before me stood a figure of pure energy, bright and radiant. It was an entity that pulsed in tones of light, and the sensation that emanated from it was indescribable. She looked at me with infinite compassion, and at the same time, I felt as if we had known each other for a long time. That presence was Elion. Even though he hadn't said his name, something in me already knew what to call him. It was like meeting a very old friend, someone who was always there, waiting for me. "Welcome, Calista," the presence said wordlessly, its communication flowing like a current of energy directly into my mind. It was a sweet but firm sound, a voice that seemed to come from within me, and from everywhere around me at the same time. I felt tears that weren't physical, but somehow were real. My whole life, my fears, my anguish seemed insignificant before Elion. At that moment, I realized that he wasn't there to judge me, but to help me understand the lessons I hadn't yet assimilated. It was as if he could see each of my choices, and with a gentle gesture, Elion began to show me scenes from my own life. These scenes played before me like a movie, but in a much more vivid way. I relived moments of discouragement, the small mistakes that I preferred to forget, the thoughtless choices that took me away from my dreams. I saw scenes from my childhood, moments when I stopped fighting for what I wanted, like dancing, giving in to other people's expectations. But I also saw the times when I was brave, when I fought for what I believed in, even when I was scared. Elion showed me that each of these moments, both the ones I considered failures and the successes, formed a line of energy that shaped who I was. He revealed that each experience, no matter how painful, had a greater purpose, contributing to the growth of my soul. Nothing was accidental. Everything was part of a planned journey so that I could become the person I really am. This encounter brought me such a strong feeling of welcome that I felt as if I had finally found my true home. In that place, next to Elion, there was no fear, guilt, or regret. There was only love and acceptance, a deep sense of belonging, and that, at that moment, everything was exactly as it should be. With a silent voice, Elion conveyed a message that would resonate with me forever. The purpose of your existence is to learn to live with kindness and gratitude. Allow yourself to grow and be transformed by love, because that is what unites everything and everyone. With those words, I knew that meeting with Elion was the prelude to something even greater. I felt like a new revelation was about to happen. And again, I surrendered to that strength, allowing it to guide me to the next step of this extraordinary journey. After Elion's silent farewell, I realized that a new presence was approaching. Unlike his energy, this was incredibly familiar, something that had somehow been part of me forever. A figure formed before me, outlined in an ethereal light, like a reflection of something I could barely make out. As I looked closer, I realized that this presence was, in fact, me. It was a version of myself, but in a form I had never seen before, a pure form, untouched by any imperfection, suffering, or doubt. There were no words to describe what I felt at that moment. It was like seeing myself for the first time, stripped of all the roles and masks I wore. There, before me, was my higher self, the highest, most untouched part of my soul, the perfect version of who I truly am. The figure looked at me with such profound calm and wisdom that, for a moment, I felt a silent reverence, as if I were before a deity. "I am you, Calista," I heard in a whisper that seemed to come from deep within me. "I am your essence, the part of you that never fully embodies, but that always accompanies you, guiding each step of your journey." I looked at that being with a mixture of admiration and amazement. Seeing my soul in its purest form was like looking at a celestial work of art, something beyond any human understanding. Deep down, I knew that this essence had always been with me, but everyday life and the limitations of the physical world prevented me from realizing its presence. Communication between us was nonverbal. It was an exchange of feelings and thoughts, as if our consciousnesses were intertwined. Every doubt, every fear I carried seemed to disappear in the face of that calm. My soul, my higher self, seemed to convey an unconditional love, a love that came not just from me, but from everything that existed. At that moment, I was flooded with an overwhelming realization. My soul, this highest part of me, would never fully incarnate in the physical world. She remained on this higher plane, observing, guiding, sending fragments of wisdom and protection so that I could grow and evolve. I was, on Earth, just an extension of this essence. It was as if my life were a projection, a ray of light sent from something much bigger than me. My higher self began to show me scenes from my life, but in a different way than Elion had shown it. Instead of revisiting my mistakes and successes, I saw how each of my experiences formed a kind of learning experience. I understood that my struggles and achievements were part of a greater plan, a divine project of spiritual growth. "You are never alone, Calista," my essence conveyed. "I was always with you, watching every step, every fall, and every victory, and I will always be here, waiting to welcome every little piece of you when you return home." These words were like a balm for my soul. I had never felt such a deep, true connection. I realized that although physical life was full of challenges, these challenges were necessary for the growth of my soul. It was as if my higher self encouraged me to accept pain, to embrace difficult moments as vital parts of my spiritual evolution. I felt a complete union, a harmony that transcended any human limit. It was a certainty that my true essence was immortal, eternal, and that this superior version of myself would continue to exist far beyond my time on earth. Knowing that I was an extension of something so great brought me a peace and confidence that I had never experienced. Before leaving, my essence transmitted one last teaching. Remember, Calista, that love is the force that unites all things. Your mission is to bring this love to the world, in every action, in every thought, because love is the primordial energy that connects all existence. With a silent farewell, I felt my essence drifting away, leaving me with a sense of fullness and renewed purpose. I knew my journey was far from over, but now I was certain that I would never be alone. And with this understanding, I prepared to move forward, to explore the mysteries that the universe still held for me. After meeting my higher self, I felt an indescribable expansion, as if, instead of being in a single point, I was everywhere at once, connected to everything. This sense of unity led me on a journey beyond the limits of what we know as reality. My eyes, or what was left of my vision, opened to a vast field of stars and galaxies, an immense, pulsating cosmos that revealed itself in ways I had never imagined. There, among the stars and nebulae that shone in shades of blue, purple and gold, I saw luminous shapes moving. They were beings of pure light, spheres of energy that seemed to carry their own intelligence. Each of these spheres had a specific color and vibration, and I intuited that they were on a journey, each following a purpose that I could not fully understand. These beings were not like us. They did not have human form or a physical presence. They were entities from a higher plane, interdimensional beings that transcend time and space. I felt an inexplicable attraction to these beings and, somehow, I felt that they also noticed my presence. One of them approached, radiating a light so intense that it almost looked like a living flame, but with a welcoming softness. As it approached, this entity transmitted a sense of peace and belonging that enveloped me completely. It was like rediscovering a family I didn't know I had, an ancestral connection that surpassed any limit of time. Without words, this sphere of light shared images and sensations with me. I saw distant planets, worlds that existed in other dimensions, each with landscapes and life forms that defied any terrestrial concept. I saw beings similar to the luminous spheres, but in different colors and frequencies, each working on different missions. It was as if they were playing roles in the universe, exploring, teaching, learning, and maintaining balance between dimensions. I could feel their intentions, their purposes. These beings were on an ongoing mission of expansion and love, traveling between worlds, leaving their mark and guiding civilizations at different stages of development. I understood in some way that they were guardians of knowledge, carrying secrets about the origin of the universe and the destiny of souls. At a certain point, I felt that the energies of these beings merged with mine, as if I were also part of this flow. I was led to a deeper understanding of my own existence and theirs. The universe, in all its vastness, was a living organism, and I was a cell in that organism, part of a greater consciousness, of a cosmic harmony that connected everything. Suddenly, I saw our own planet, small and fragile, floating in this ocean of stars. I felt a deep compassion for the earth and everything it holds. It was as if the love of the beings of light was also directed towards our planet, as if they were enveloping it in invisible protection. I knew that many of the problems and pains we face as humanity were unknown to other civilizations, and that, even so, these beings maintained loving vigilance, respecting our journey and our choices. Before moving away, the entity of light that had connected to me transmitted one last feeling, that the universe is, essentially, love. This love is the essence that creates, sustains, and keeps everything in balance. And each being, each star, each dimension is an expression of this same force. As it moved away, the sphere of light seemed to say that I should not forget this truth, even after returning to the physical world. My vision began to slowly fade, and I knew I was being guided back, but carrying within me the certainty that the universe was much more vast and connected than I could ever imagine. With a heart full of love and gratitude, I left the star realm and prepared for the next step of this journey, eager to discover where else this experience would take me. When my vision adjusted again, I realized I was in a completely different place, a place of indescribable beauty. It was a vast garden, but nothing there resembled any earthly garden. The plants, the flowers, the trees, they all vibrated with a gentle energy, as if they were made of light. There was a pulsing essence in every leaf, in every petal. It was as if that place was the heart of all creation, where life flourished in its purest and most sublime form. Every step I took resonated like a note from an invisible symphony. It was as if the ground itself was alive, responding to my touch. In the air, a sweet, enveloping melody echoed, a song that was not played by instruments, but seemed to emerge from the plants and flowers around me. I felt enveloped by this melody, as if it were dancing in my body, pulsing in harmony with the rhythm of the universe. At a point further on, I saw a mystical flower that seemed to shine more brightly than the others. Its petals were a deep blue, with golden nuances that moved, creating designs and shapes that changed every moment. I was drawn to this flower, and as I approached it, I felt an uncontrollable desire to join it in a dance. It was as if love was flowing from every cell of that being, radiating an energy of peace and unity. The moment I started dancing, I felt a deep connection with every being around me, as if we were all participating in a cosmic choreography. It was not a dance in the traditional sense, but an expression of love in its purest and most vivid form. Every movement, every turn, every step was a manifestation of something divine, something that went beyond any human word or feeling. The very essence of the flower seemed to move along with me, and I realized that every being, every plant, every particle in that garden was in perfect synchronization. I felt a presence beside me, and, as I looked, I saw other souls, other essences that were also participating in that dance. Each of them radiated a unique energy, but we were all united, connected by a greater force. With each gesture, I realized that this dance was not just a celebration, but a profound lesson about the nature of love. We were expressing something deeper than the simple act of existing. We were revealing the essence of love as a living force, a force that unites all beings. As the dance continued, a realization dawned on me. That dance was a representation of living love, the love that knows no barriers and that unites all souls, all beings, in a single spiritual creation. I understood that love was not just a feeling, but an essential energy that permeates everything and everyone. This energy moved like an invisible chain, connecting every particle, every being, every plane of existence. Every time I moved, I felt like I was expanding, connecting even more deeply with each soul there. I was not just a dancer in this spiritual garden. I was part of it. I was an expression of that energy of love that held the entire universe together in harmony. It was as if I had found the source of all life, and that source was love. When the dance ended, I felt an indescribable peace and joy. I looked around me and realized that this love, this union, was the true essence of everything. As I understood this truth, I felt a new instruction being conveyed to me, a message that I should carry this understanding into the physical world, that I should live in a way that reflects this love in every gesture, in every thought. With one last look at the garden, I realized that this was the true home of the soul, the place where all return, where all souls meet again in an eternal dance of love and unity. It was a temporary goodbye, but I knew that place would remain with me, as a reminder of who I really was and what my purpose was. With a heart full of gratitude and love, I left the garden, taking with me the certainty that, no matter where I was, that spiritual dance would continue to live within me. When the dance ended, and the spiritual garden began to disappear, a deep sense of wholeness came over me. I felt like I had absorbed the lessons and secrets of that place, but there was still one last instruction for me, something I needed to understand before returning. I felt the presence of Elyon, my higher self, and all the souls and beings that had accompanied me on this journey. It was as if they were coming together to share one last teaching with me. The light that surrounded me began to take shape again, and Elyon's presence was felt, like a gentle breeze that caressed my soul. His words came not as a voice, but as a wave of understanding that spread throughout my essence. "Calista," he conveyed, "you have been gifted with a vision of the love and unity that sustains the universe. Now, your mission is to live these teachings." I remained silent, absorbing every word, feeling the weight and importance of that message. Elian continued, "Love is not something you just feel. It's something you live. Every action, every thought, should reflect this love that you saw and felt here. This is what will make you a true expression of the divine, what will allow you to live in harmony with your essence." For a moment, I was overcome with a series of questions. How could I take this understanding to the physical world? How could I maintain the purity of this love and this union when returning to my life, to the challenges of everyday life? It seemed like a huge, almost impossible task, and a slight anxiety began to emerge. But then, Elian conveyed a feeling of calm, of peace. He seemed to be saying that you didn't need to have all the answers right away. Just trust and live authentically, one step at a time. "Remember, Calista," he conveyed, "true spirituality is not in great deeds but in small acts of kindness. Love, forgive, understand, and bring peace wherever you go. This is the way to live in harmony with your essence." With this last instruction, I felt a slight pressure around me, as if the garden, the light, and all the presences were slowly moving away, preparing to guide me back into the body. The transition back into the physical started as a gentle movement, but as I got closer, the density of material reality became more intense. It was as if I was trying to fit into a limited space after having experienced the immensity. The feeling of being back in the body was heavy, almost suffocating. The lightness, euphoria, and expansion of the soul were replaced by the solidity of the flesh, the weight of the bones, the return to linear time. It was like being in a space too small for the soul I now knew was limitless. I felt my heart start beating again, each pulse echoing through my skin and muscles. My body felt stiff, uncomfortable, as if I were a puppet resuming movement after being still for too long. Little by little, I began to hear the sounds around me, the muffled sound of conversations, the noise of the plane. I slowly opened my eyes, and the light of the physical environment seemed almost painful, so different from the spiritual light that had enveloped me minutes before. The vision was blurry at first, but gradually I was able to make out the familiar shapes of the seats, of the people around me. I sat there, trying to connect with my body and the physical world again, still feeling the gentle presence of Elian and the spiritual energies around me. Learning was engraved in my soul. I didn't need to try hard to remember. It was like a truth that was now part of me, something I could never forget. With one last breath, I understood that my spiritual journey, as intense and overwhelming as it had been, was just the beginning of a new way of living. The life that awaited me would be different. Now, I knew my purpose was to reflect the love, unity, and harmony I had experienced, and with a renewed heart, I prepared myself for this new phase, knowing that no matter how challenging the physical reality was, I would never truly be alone. After that experience, returning to my routine was like waking up from a deep and intense dream to a reality that no longer made so much sense. I woke up every day with the feeling that the physical world was a thin, superficial layer, like a veil that hid the true dimensions I had experienced. Life around me continued as it always had, people rushing around too busy to notice what lay beyond appearances. I was trying to get involved, but something in me had changed profoundly. In the first few days, I didn't tell anyone about what I experienced. How could I explain to someone what it was like to dance in the Garden of Souls, or find my higher self? Trying to put it into words seemed to desecrate the purity of the experience. Furthermore, I was afraid that no one would understand or believe. Even to me, at times, it seemed like a dream, a distant memory of something my mind could barely understand. I decided to isolate myself. I spent hours alone, walking the trails and parks of Seattle, trying to absorb the immensity of what I experienced. Sometimes I felt the presence of Elian and my higher self, like a gentle breeze touching my face, as if they were still beside me, reminding me that this experience was real and that I was not alone. Each time this subtle presence emerged, I felt the weight of the mission I had been given, to live with love and kindness, and to spread that light throughout the world. During this period, I began to review every aspect of my life. The material ambitions that once drove me, career, success, recognition, all of that now seemed insignificant. It was as if all of these goals were small, temporary projections, lacking the depth that I now knew existed. My true mission was far beyond anything the physical world could offer me. I had experienced love in its purest form and understood that this was the purpose of all things. The weeks passed, and little by little, I began to find ways to live what I had learned, I decided that, although it was difficult to share this experience, I could manifest the love I knew in small acts, in the way I treated others, in the patience I offered each person, in the forgiveness I cultivated in my heart. I found a peace that was previously unknown to me, an acceptance that allowed me to view human failings with compassion rather than judgment. Over time, I realized that the true transformation was not in the grandeur of the experience itself, but in the change it brought about in every detail of life, in every smile I offered, in every word of support. I tried to put a little of that divine love that was revealed to me. It was a silent and discreet but powerful practice, as if each day I sowed small seeds of light around me. Finally, I understood that my mission was much simpler than I imagined. It wasn't about doing something grand or extraordinary, but about living authentically, bringing kindness to every corner. This was the essence of Elian's teaching, the practice of love that I had experienced in the Garden of Souls. In the end, I realized that love doesn't need explanations or grand gestures to be felt. It manifests itself in small things, in invisible acts that often go unnoticed, but that, in their simplicity, can transform the world. And so I began to live with a new perspective. My life now is a continuation of that spiritual dance, an expression of gratitude for the experience I have been given. I carry the certainty that, one day, I will return to that garden, where all souls are reunited. But until then, my mission is clear: to spread the light of love and unity, being a silent witness to the beauty that exists beyond what the eyes can see. If you like this beautiful spiritual testimony, leave a like, comment on your impressions, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to activate the notification bell to watch each new video and help us spread this message to a greater number of people. Until next time.